Hello and welcome to week 5. In this short video I'm going to summarise some of the key features of treatment groups. This is the start of module 3 and week 5 and week 6 we're looking in some more detail at both treatment and task groups. One of the key things that you will hear a lot in this unit is the purpose of the group, and I'm looking at slide 4. What is the purpose of the group? And the purpose of the group is always going to determine significantly the planning of the group and is crucial to the decisions around the type of the group will be offered, the group composition, the size of the group, and the staffing of the group. The purpose can be seen differently, and it might be different for different people involved. For example, the agency, the organisation you're working for, the potential members of the group might have different perceptions or ideas about what the group is about. The key here is that the purpose is clearly stated and people know what they're participating in. One of the significant differences, I guess, with treatment and task groups is that task groups are often action focused and they're looking at outcomes, they're looking at achieving a goal. They might be looking at running an organisation, they might be looking at raising money for an event. The members have the common goal, which is to achieve an outcome or carry out a mandate or produce a product. Often the roles are predetermined. There might be, not always, but there might be very clear roles for people in those groups. In treatment groups, the significant difference is that roles are often not set. They develop through the interaction between the different members. And the focus is very much on the development of the individual. And it's around addressing behaviour, being able to adjust or adapt to a circumstance or a developmental or a life stage. However, one of the things that is common where in both treatment and task groups is to be aware that it's the interaction, it's the communication, it's the dialogue that occurs amongst the members which actually creates the group. Some of the other things that distinguish between treatment and task groups is that communication patterns in treatment groups are open, and there's an encouragement and an emphasis on people expressing themselves and communicating with others. And in task groups, the pattern may tend to be more formal and more task focused. In task groups, the level of communication is often guided by the agenda. The purpose of the meeting is to work towards that outcome, and the agenda helps to guide the group towards that. Treatment groups often have flexible procedures for meetings. However, they often have a warm-up or an icebreaker. They have time for people to speak and to work on their own concerns or their issues, and often there's time to summarise the work that the group has done on that particular day or during that particular session. Task groups might often have more formalised rules and procedures that govern how members conduct themselves, how people speak to each other, and how decisions are made. Treatment groups, the key distinguishing thing about treatment groups is that they are composed of members who have similar concerns, problems and abilities. People have come together or are at that group with a common life experience or a common problem or a common issue or a similar outcome that they're looking in their lives. Task groups are often composed of members with the resources or skills to achieve the outcome. In treatment groups also, people disclose their own concerns and problems. So there's a high level of self-disclosure in a treatment group. In a task group, self-disclosure is infrequent, and members are often confining themselves to speaking about the task at hand. Treatment groups are also often confidential, and task groups are not always so, although there is a variation with that. The criteria for evaluating success also differs between treatment and task groups. In treatment groups, the success is likely to be measured by the extent to which individuals have been able to address their problem, or to achieve their personal goals, or to achieve change in their lives. Task groups, however, are seen to be successful when they reach the group goals, such as raising funds, for example, or addressing a particular issue. Slide 14 is a photo of some objects, and this slide is really an opportunity for you to have a look at that and just see what you notice and what might stand out to you in this picture. One of the things that I encourage you to think about is how your approach to setting up a treatment group is likely to be influenced by your own observations, by your gender, by your cultural perspective. One of the things that in the class, the internal class, we spoke about people's different reactions to this image, and for some people it highlighted their own personal need to be very organised when they approach setting up a treatment group, and also how first impressions can either invite people to participate or can alienate participation. One example might be for people arriving and participating in a group to see an English word that's quite a long word and that's upside down could immediately alienate some people and cause some frustration or fear. We're just having a look now at 6 different types of treatment groups, support groups, on slide 16. Support groups support people to cope with stressful life events and encourage people to develop and find coping abilities and mechanisms. Members usually share their experiences and they listen to each other's stories, and from that they actually get support. The worker will act as a facilitator in that situation. So support groups might be a group of parents who've recently had a child die. A group of people who are recovering from a cancer treatment might be another example of a support group. Educational groups, also known as psychoeducational. The focus of these groups is for people to get new information, knowledge, and learn new skills to cope with a life experience. They can be more didactic. They may involve someone presenting or speaking to a group of people, giving them some new information. However, they'll still use a variety of methods: role plays, discussions, and small group exercises. Other examples of these might be parenting groups, assertiveness training, foster parent training, training for volunteers. Often with educational groups there's a manual or there's a course outline, and it can be quite prescriptive that week 1 a certain topic is dealt with, week 2 another topic is dealt with. There's a structure and there's a process through which people go through. Growth groups on slide 19. Growth groups are really about people developing their potential or their awareness or their insight. They offer opportunities for people to become aware of their own thoughts and their feelings and their behaviour and expand and change these. The leader often acts as a facilitator and a role model, There might be common goals, but they're usually around promoting socio-economic, socio-emotional health, rather than people coming to fix a problem or fix an issue. Some examples of these might be women's consciousness raising groups, men's groups, or groups for young people that look at values. Therapeutic groups, as the name suggests, draws very strongly from the theories that we were speaking about at the beginning of this unit, that often apply in individual work, in counselling, in casework. These theories form the basis on which how these groups are run. Members still will come together because there is a common life experience or an issue that people are wanting to address, such as mental health, or learning, or learning to live with a medical condition. The leaders of therapeutic groups usually are trained in counselling and often draw heavily from a therapeutic background. They often may be also providing counselling to people in a one-on-one situation. They have good knowledge around human behaviour and group dynamics and group counselling. They will often draw on theories that inform the way the group is run and the way that people interact in the group. Group members still support each other and normalise the issues and provide feedback to each other. Hahowever, people will know from the outset that a therapeutic group is based on a particular model. For example, cognitive behavioural therapy. If this is the therapeutic approach that is being explored in a particular group, group members would know that at the outset. Group members have the opportunity to observe other members in a social situation and to deal with their personal issues in that context. Socialisation groups are very much focused at changing and developing behaviours that assist and encourage people to participate with others around developing their confidence, their communication skills. Sort of groups that this might include might be people who are recovering from drug addiction, or people with an acquired brain injury, and learning skills and how to develop confidence and be able to communicate with others. Self-help groups are voluntary groups established for people to mutually support and assist each other, and there's a focus on a particular purpose. Usually self-help groups come about because people identify that other more structured groups, other groups that may be on offer, may not address their needs. People organise themselves. Members are highly motivated in self-help groups, and they're dedicated to finding ways to help themselves and others like them. Some examples of these would be Alcoholics Anonymous and GROW, which is a mental health self-help group. Even though those two examples, they have structure, there is not a facilitator, there is not a worker running the group. The responsibility for running the group is shared amongst the members. For a summary in more detail of treatment groups, I encourage you to read the chapters in the text, Toslin and Rivas. So just to summarise some of those points, the purpose of the group, the skill of the worker, the people who are attending the group, the issue that they are facing, the changes that people want to see addressed is going to determine very much the group that will be offered. On slide 26, there's a summary exercise that has 26 and 27 has got 5 different examples of groups of people in different situations. It's to encourage you to think about what type of group you might think would best suit those following groups, and what sort of skills and knowledge do you think you would need as a worker to conduct such a group. One of the discussions that we've had in the class in Darwin is, for example, running a group for HIV positive women. Immediately, you would imagine that the appropriate person to be the facilitator for such a group would probably not be a man. So when we're actually looking at different groups of people and the appropriate response in terms of setting up a group and the preparation, the information around who that group is for, who is likely to attend, what are the situations that they've been facing and what are their common experiences, is going to shape how you will go about preparing for that group. We also have looked at in other circumstances, such as a group of residents wanting a bus service in their area. Still, there may be an appropriate group response to that, and again, doing your homework and finding out the demographics of the area, how to communicate with government departments, how will people in the community in that area be involved in being part of a solution. All of those things are going to be things that as a worker you are going to be wanting to think about as you start to prepare for running a group. The last two slides are about working with children, and I'm not going to spend time on those, but just to highlight that working with children particularly is a specialised area, and that a lot of workers who do work in that area may have done specific training to do that. However, if you're working in a school setting, you might be working with adolescents and young people, you may be asked or required to run a group for children, and there's quite particular considerations that you need to bear in mind when working with children, and a lot of those might be also around consent and about working with the adults or parents as well who are responsible for those children. That's the end of today's seminar. Bye.